What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. Obviously, this is a little different than our usual set. We are actively driving at the time, so I'm going to be looking a little bit more over here than over here. For those of you that have been following along with the channel from the onset, we have an entire series where I did this called Driving to the Draft, but this is a whole new thing for JaAR, at least, where we're actually moving. Dave, what did you call this? This is an episode of Car JaAR.
It is.
To introduce our guests, you guys saw them in a previous video, but from the Geek for All YouTube channel, we also have
David
and
Schnaz.
So we all read the story on our car trip, and we are now going to talk to you about the story. And this week's story was Campaign of Vengeance. And the first thing I want to say is, I don't know what I was expecting, but I think that I genuinely was ready because of all the other stories that we've read. I think I was genuinely ready for this story to be another setup story, to get us into it. And no,
clearly not.
We're into it. This is it.
This is war.
There's no more it to get into, really. So yeah, we are in it.
If anything, things kind of came to a head.
Things came to a big head, and it was it was rough. Like, this was a crazy story. It was awesome. It was brutal.
I enjoyed it.
Oh my god.
Things died. Things got melded into stone. Stone swords. Blood everywhere. I mean, it was like, if you want to take Game of Thrones, all out war, bloodshed, and put it into a story. Well, Game of Thrones is a story, but put it into magic. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and it was interesting.
We're just missing sex at this point.
There was lots of sex.
There was lots of sex. Okay,
there was penetration.
It was happening in my pants, but there was
okay.
There was
sex wet.
There was a lot of lead up to this, this confrontation between the two, and there were a lot of callbacks. And the other thing was, because Dave and Schnaz have not been following along with the stories as heavily as Amy and I have, I felt the need before we started to try to give them a heads up, be like, by the way, this is what we're reading, and you guys tell me if you agree, but I feel like everything that I said was later repeated in the story.
Pretty much.
Anyway, which is props to the story team, because the story was so good, and yet it still was able to make callbacks so that you didn't feel lost. You still even if you hadn't been in the story from the beginning, you would still get it, right? It would still make sense. There were probably certain aspects of it that didn't necessarily,
Well, when you were explaining the ley lines thing, and you were talking, she's using ley lines to do this and then it just then
ley lines, and then
I was like, God damn it!
Then she described the ley lines, which is great.
She was in the Hellhole for 1,000 years. She was in the Hellhole for 1,000 years.
Yeah. So I kind of anticipatorily was like, oh well, they're not going to explain this because we already know it, so I might as well explain it. And then they just explained it for us. So
which is also good for us, because even though we know that information, the story didn't get boring. I was still hanging on every word.
Well, the reason for that is because it was exposition, but it gave it urgency, because this was Nahiri recalling all this, and now she's confronting Soren. So bringing all those memories back gives her actions agency. Now she's just she's pissed. This is what happened, and now it's all coming to the climax here.
Yeah.
Yes. She had 1,000 years to prepare for this, so I figured. It would end, the way it did, and you know what? It did.
And you know what? It was interesting because I was wondering how they were going to end the story, and how they were going to end this story, and whether or not one of them was going to be dead at the end. And they did leave it open so that Soren could be saved, but I mean, round 2 or 3 or whatever, soundly to Nahiri. Yeah. I mean, she just left him in stone.
And the winner is.
Yes, she left him in stone facing Emrakul as Emrakul destroys his plane. I mean, we know, because Eldritch Moon has been fully spoiled at this point. We know the final story point, the anguished unmaking, if you will, of Eldritch Moon. At least I know it. Nobody else does yet. So maybe towards the end we'll tell everybody what that is and how.
Just fuck the guy.
And how whether Emrakul wins or whether the Liliana and the Gatewatch win, we'll find out shortly. But anyway, in this story, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Amy is a big fan of Nahiri, so Amy...
The ground is solidly wet.
Amy, what did you think of this story?
You can't be that vague with the question. 'Cause we don't have all day.
What does your pants say about the story?
My pants are satisfied.
There we go.
Story.
That's all you need.
The story was incredible. The detail was incredible, and I loved the fact that, like I said, it just jumped right in. I mean, we're 3 weeks into the Eldritch Moon story, maybe 4. When we were at this point in Shadows over Innistrad, we were just still talking. You know, Jace was just meeting with Liliana and like chatting with her.
Yeah.
He does that.
And right, but that was it. Like they had a little bit of banter back and forth, but that was it. And now you've got, Nahiri and Soren
And cultists and vampires.
and stabbing each other and bleeding and
Blood, like just things getting squashed.
And
everywhere,
Eldrazi.
and
Yes.
ribs getting
Eldrazi horses.
caved in, and heads getting like fucking.
Teeth getting pummeled by stone. Like
oh my
Yeah.
god, the marble.
Swaddling in stone.
That was so good. Well, the swaddling was Nahiri. He's talking about when the marble was that one vampire was like, "I'm gonna drink your blood," and then her face got smashed in by marble. Like it was so good, and it was like funny and interesting and brutal. Yes, absolutely.
Quite brutal.
Yeah.
Definitely. Brutality is the name of the game.
Yeah, it was just great, and the fact that the whole time, at least in the beginning, when Nahiri, or when it was describing the fact that Nahiri was like shooting up stone pillars or things to like stab at people or whatever, and it was like, oh, and she's killing all the vampires. I'm like, all the vampires? Where's Olivia? And because I was curious, I knew Olivia was going to be there, and sure enough,
mobilized for war.
she was mobilized for war, and sure enough, she shows up at one point and is her smug, arrogant self. As I would have been upset if she wasn't, but she showed up and she was her smug, arrogant self, and it was great. I mean, and
she just goes, I like this one, and I'm just thinking, hot action.
it was great. Like it was so cool, and. I mean, I guess I don't know how vampirism works on Innistrad, but Soren drank Nahiri. So I don't know whether she's going to turn into a vampire now, whether she can like manipulate herself because she's a planeswalker and
A core vampire.
Right. Well, I mean, there are vampires on Zendikar.
I don't care if she's a vampire or not. I want to feel her wrath.
Nahiri's Wrath, the mythic that was basically spoiled by this story. Campaign of Vengeance was the uncommon spoiled by this story. You guys know, if you've been watching this series from the beginning, that I love when cards get spoiled by the stories. I think that's incredible. I think that it's a nice balance that they've kind of gotten to with bringing importance to reading the stories and like spoiling cards on their own or giving people in the community cards to spoil, which is also always incredible. So, I really appreciated that. I don't know that I could say enough about how incredible this story was. I think this one is like second only to I Am Avacyn for me, personally, in like how good it was. And
Yeah, it's definitely first for me.
Oh, it's first for you? Okay. I would say I Am Avacyn is still first for me.
Everything else is shit.
This one was incredible. Like, I really enjoyed it, but I Am Avacyn was just I think.
Okay? I am Nahiri.
Amy is
I am
Nahiri.
Nahiri's bitch.
So this story was incredible. Please, as always, guys, let us know what you thought of the stories in the comment section down below. Just again, as always. Yeah, it was amazing. I don't know that if they had to, does anybody have a bad thing to say about this story?
hard to follow some of like the descriptions when she basically, Nahiri at one point basically just takes the manor and just like rips it apart and just like flings it all over the place and just like bisects it and just, it's like, it's kind of hard to figure where everything is sometimes. Like the writer is really good though, and like it wasn't too hard, but it got a little chaotic. But stone and crap's just floating all over the place in midair, so it's going to be hard to figure.
And that makes perfect sense. And I think honestly, the way that could be remedied would be just to give it like a second or third read to kind of get your own mental bearings and like better paint your own mental picture. But for people who, like us, want to just sit down and in one sitting read it, I would say that's a fair assessment, is that it's a little confusing.
So that's my bad, not the writer's.
It's your fault for not reading it more than one. No, and like honestly, that's not to say, wow, this writer's terrible because of that. Like, no, the descriptions were still incredible. And the information was just great. It's just, it was again a little hard to follow.
Chaos.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because there was war going on. I mean, you had Nahiri and her cultists versus Soren and his vampires, and then at the end, not even at the end, towards the middle, Nahiri was like, okay, I'm gonna just shoot stone up and start stabbing people everywhere. Oh, and by the way, Eldrazi. And just blew open the walls, and Eldrazi flew out, and it was great. I also, what I really liked was in the beginning when Nahiri was talking about the vampire. It was like, oh, I'm looking at a vampire right now, and he's got, I can see his teeth, and I can see his armor, and I can see his eyes, and I can see that he's trapped in stone. And it was perfect, because I was like, oh, is she fighting a vampire right now? Like, is she talking about Soren? Nope. She's talking about one of the ones trapped in stone.
You are so evil, ugly, and god-awful. And you're dead.
It was so good. So good. I mean, and they were really able to show the interactions with Olivia and with Soren and with Nahiri. And to be honest, they even showed, because I'm pretty sure that the vampire who threatened to drink Nahiri's blood and then got smashed in the face by marble is the rare that they spoiled last week, the rare vampire priestess or whatever that they spoiled last week. I think, I could be wrong, let me know what you guys think, but that's my suspicion.
Now she's going to be the vampiric dumber.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's just dead now.
Yeah,
but
that kind of didn't end well for her.
Yeah. So, obviously, guys, as you can see, we are on the move in this one. It is a card jar, so this is a little bit of a shorter one. Honestly, though, the story's incredible. I mean,
it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
we don't need to review it because it's just incredible.
Yeah, if you haven't read it, go read it. If you haven't seen the art for Campaign of Vengeance was beautiful. The art for Nahiri's Wrath was great. My feeling with Nahiri's Wrath was that her mouth looked a little weird. That's just my personal opinion, and I think, but I will give them credit that it's supposed to be for a much smaller medium. So once I see it in card form, I'll say whether I still think it looks weird or not. It might be just because it's blown up that her mouth looks like weirdly large and out of proportion, but whatever. The art's
she was just screaming that much.
Yes. Well, and the art's still that amazing. I mean, it really, the description of it in the story was that there were 4 swords in like a peacock's plume, and Phoenix. Sure enough, or phoenix plume, excuse me.
She's better than that.
Yes, and you look at it, and that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like, the sweeping fan blade of swords, like glowing red hot. Her eyes were red hot. She was screaming. So yeah, the picture was incredible. Both pieces of art were incredible, and I think it was a great contrast between the two, because you had Campaign of Vengeance with Soren looking like very regal, and all the vampires like dressed in their like awesome looking armor, and Soren's got like his hand in the air, and they're all like standing there, and then you just have Nahiri screaming with swords all around her. So
to say like anger beats order. Anger beats order.
And okay, so we'll talk about this since everybody's here and we get to see everybody's reactions. So Soren was left to look at Emrakul destroying Innistrad, and Nahiri's feeling as she planeswalked away was, you're going to watch the destruction of your plane, and that's what you deserve. And Olivia came over and was like, I like, your sword. And she picked up his sword, and he was like, oh great, she'll help me. And he was like, please, you have to help me. And she was like, yeah, whatever, and just floated away. And
she's off to take the Iron Throne.
Yeah, exactly. And she wants to be, she said, I think I like the idea of Olivia, Lord of Innistrad. And for those of you that know old school Magic or played Magic back when Soren first came out as a card, Soren's first card was Soren, Lord of Innistrad. So that's what he is. He is a vampire lord on Innistrad. So that's great. Now, Soren is trapped in this stone to watch. I don't know who is going to set him free. I imagine it will be someone, maybe one of the Gatewatch, maybe another vampire or something, but I suspect someone will set him free and he will be okay, because I've learned enough from comic books to know that unless you watch someone die, they're not dead, and even then.
Yeah.
So
they'll still come back.
Yeah.
That's one way to thank you, Superman.
Yeah. So
I hate you.
But I will say that as I said, Eldritch Moon has been fully spoiled. There is a card, and I'm not going to remember the name of the card because we'll get there. I haven't memorized all the cards yet. It just got spoiled recently. But it is shown that the way that this story ends, the anguished unmaking of this set, is that Emrakul loses by, now on the card, it's pictured with Tamio and Nissa trapping Emrakul inside of Innistrad's moon. Because it basically, the flavor text on the card said that it was the only thing large and powerful enough to trap even an Eldrazi Titan.
And now the name makes sense.
Right? It's an Eldritch Moon. Because there is an Eldrazi in the moon.
Sweet.
Beautiful, perfect, amazing. I'm looking forward to, because honestly, even though that was spoiled, and like that's what's going to happen, there is no way that I don't want to see how that happens.
Definitely want to read what happens next.
Yes. So from my spooky face, since I'm all in darkness and Dave's all in darkness and Amy and Schnaz are all out of focus in the back, this was not the best shot video, but we did what we could, guys, so we apologize for that. But we wanted to get this.
Heck, it doesn't matter because this video is in no way as important as reading that story, guys.
Agreed.
That story is the best story in my
Agreed.
opinion.
And as I said, this will be an abbreviated episode. Again, we are on the move. We apologize for that. We'll be back next week with your regularly scheduled program, if you will. But
same bad time, same bad channel.
Yeah, exactly. But we check out some of the other videos on our channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe if you have not done so yet. If you are new here, as we mentioned in the beginning, from the Geek for All YouTube channel, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And David.
And as we always say, guys, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.